Talk for Autism until every piece is found.
And we are back, and we are going to dive right in here with Planned Parenthood. Man, we started working on this Planned Parenthood story, and it took us hours and hours and hours of research to put this story together. It just wove and wove and interwove until it was twined all around itself. And we sent stories back and forth to each other and back and forth and back and forth. And finally, we tried to make some kind of sense out of it. So we're going to go through it and see if we can figure this out between us and get it back on to where we can tell you all about it. Well, we're going to start right here. In 2009, Planned Parenthood Federation of America gave Margaret Sanger the Margaret Sanger Award to Hillary Clinton for her contributions to the advancement of women's health care. And during her acceptance speech, Hillary Clinton said, "It was a great privilege when I was told that I would receive this award. I admire Margaret Sanger enormously. Her courage, her tenacity, her vision. When I think about what she did all those years ago in Brooklyn, taking on archetypes, taking on attitudes and accusations flowing from all directions, I'm really in awe of her. There are a lot of lessons we can learn from her life, from the causes she launched and fought for and scarified for so greatly." Well, she really thinks a lot of Margaret Sanger. Well, who was Margaret Sanger? Margaret Sanger is the founder of Planned Parenthood. She was a eugenicist, someone who, much like Adolf Hitler, believed in the wiping out of inferior races. And she particularly had no respect for blacks and considered them weeds. We're going to give you some of her quotes later on. Another person who thinks very highly of Planned Parenthood is Mr. Obama. He spoke at their big confab that they had in 2013, in April of 2013, and at the end of his speech, he thanked them for having him there and said, "God bless you." I think he was the first sitting president to ever address Planned Parenthood in person. He vowed to join Planned Parenthood in fighting against what he said were efforts across the country to turn women's health back to the 1950s. His comments were the first by a sitting president before the abortion rights group. He lauded its nearly 100 years of service to women, providing cancer screenings, contraceptives, and other health services. He said, when politicians try to turn Planned Parenthood into a punching bag, they're not just talking about you. They're talking about the millions of women who you serve. Though Obama is the first sitting president to deliver a speech in front of a Planned Parenthood gathering, a sitting president still has never used the word abortion in a speech to Planned Parenthood.
And you know what, Lisa? It's actually, isn't it kind of contradictory of President Obama to, say, "Thank you, Planned Parenthood, God bless you, God bless you"? I mean, really?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
Oh my God!
It's especially now when we know now that they're dissecting these little bodies and selling them for profit.
Exactly, and and that's what all the Planned Parenthood videos showed us until the latest distraction in the media, the GOP or whatever. Now no one is even talking about it. But,
we're going to continue talking about it, and that's why it's important that we talk about this tonight. I want to go on with this just a little longer, and then I'm going to have you play his little pitch at the end of his speech. He said Planned Parenthood President Cecile Richards described Planned Parenthood as the only organization that she's ever been at where there are opponents who, in her own words, literally get up every day trying to figure out how to keep us from doing our work. Obama added, attacking pro-lifers. If she had worked in the administration, she would be more familiar with this phenomenon. The president never mentioned the word abortion in the speech, despite the fact that Planned Parenthood is the #1 abortion business in the country. Naturally, there was no mention of the Kermit Gosnell murder trial either, but as you know, it's the White House policy not to comment on ongoing legal matters that they can't capitalize on politically. It's estimated that at the time that it took Obama to speak, 7.6 abortions took place at Planned Parenthood clinics. Finally, he said, "Thank you, Planned Parenthood. God bless you. God bless you," Obama concluded. And by God, I think he's referring to Margaret Sanger. That was according to the person who wrote this article. His name was Doug Powers. This was written April 26, 2013. And at that time, of course, the Kermit Gosnell trial was still going on. And Kermit Gosnell was the abortionist who was found guilty of multiple counts of murder at his abortion clinic. Do you have that quote for me?
I
That
do.
link for me, Nick?
I do indeed. Here it is from President Obama's mouth himself.
Woman's right to make
Thanks.
her own choices about her own health. I want you to know that you've also got a president who's going to be right there with you, fighting every step of the way. Thank you, Planned Parenthood. God bless you. God bless America.
Now, is it just me, or did he kind of hesitate when he said "God bless America"?
I can't answer that question. I don't know.
I mean,
he may have.
I mean, granted, I'm actually seeing the video and stuff. You're only hearing the audio, but I do believe there was actually a slight hesitation of whether or not he was actually going to say "God bless America." But now one of the things that I want to point out, and I'm sorry, Lisa, but in the clip, this is from MSNBC, and in the lower third. They have developing now. President Obama addresses Planned Parenthood gala. Before that, it said President Obama unveils new health care law or something like that. And like, what? Really?
Right. It's almost incongruous that it all came out at the same time. Well, this all we started working on this story because of the dismemberment stories, the videos that came out, and Steve had asked me a question about the funding that goes to Planned Parenthood, and also the funding that Planned Parenthood sends to candidates. I didn't know that they sent money to candidates until we started researching the story, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But one of the things that the liberal left just screams about Planned Parenthood is that they only 3% of what they do is abortions, and what the conservatives say is no, it's 94%, and so. A New York Post writer tried to break this down. Okay, which is it? Is it 3% or is it 94%? And Michael Cantrell at the New York Post tried to unscramble this for us, and he said basically that what they do is when they have somebody come in, they may have them do a pregnancy test, and that's one thing that they do, and they may have them have a basic little screening, and that's two things that they do, and then they might have them do a pap test, and that's three things that they do, and then they might have them have a breast exam, and that's four things that they do, and then they'll do the abortion, and that's one more thing, that's five, and they'll go through all these things. But the primary reason the person is there is the abortion. And, they don't weight the abortion any heavier than they do the pregnancy test.
Exactly. Right.
And I'm back, guys. I'm sorry. I got disconnected. The thing is, they count. That's how they come up with the 3%, because they count everything, every separate procedure as a different procedure, even if it's
Correct.
giving an aspirin.
Right.
So it's like, we can make this look really small when in fact it's bigger than 3%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they used an analogy that a man from the Washington Post wrote in his story, and so I went back and I pulled the Washington Post story, and he had said, if you're gonna do your facts like that, then let's look at this and let's just say, well, if that's the case, if you're gonna use that kind of cracked reasoning, then you could say that the sponsors of the New York City Marathon could count each small cup of water they hand out, some 2 million cups, compared to the 45,000 runners, and say that mainly they're in the hydration business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's really their main focus is hydration.
Or Major League Baseball, who says, we sell 20 million hot dogs and play 2,430 games in a season. So baseball is only 0.012% of what they do.
Right.
Right.
So really what they are is hot dog vendors.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and another analogy that you guys have here is how much credit, would you give to someone for saying that he or she only drives drunk 3% of the time? Or only,
Correct.
Or
Exactly.
only cheats on business trips 3% of the time, or you talk about domestic violence, or a man that hits his wife only 3% of domestic disputes.
Right.
It
Well,
doesn't make any sense.
even Slate, which is a very left-leaning online magazine, their conservative senior editor called this the most meaningless abortion statistic ever. To say
Wow.
that their 3% is really 3% is to say it's the most meaningless abortion statistic ever. Because it's absolute nonsense.
Right. However, one statistic that is not nonsense is the fact that Planned Parenthood performs about 330,000 abortions a year, or roughly.
Absolutely.
Or that's 30% of all the abortions in the country.
That's right.
That's correct.
That's correct. Exactly right. And so when they're performing 30%, a third of the abortions that take place in our nation every year, and then they have the gall to say, well, abortions only make up 3% of what we do. Well, if I use that kind of math on my tax return,
you go to jail, honey.
That's right. That's exactly right. We'd be doing the show tonight from Leavenworth.
What are you saying? He wouldn't go to jail. He'd be elected to office.
Well, not if I'm a conservative.
No, that's right. Only if he was liberal.
See, if a conservative, and here's how you know this. And I heard Dana Perino ask this question of Geraldo Rivera this last week. Because he was saying, I don't understand why this is such a big deal. And she said, well, it would be a big deal if it had been Dick Cheney.
Wow.
And he didn't respond.
Of course he didn't.
He sat there quietly. And that's the point. If a conservative used this kind of so-called logic, because it's not logic. But if a conservative used this so-called logic, they would be laughed off of the stage.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely they would be. Absolutely they would be.
Well, let's go to the next story. Because Planned Parenthood says that 3% of all Planned Parenthood health services are abortion services, and we know that's not true. We know that it's way more than that.
Right.
The Susan B. Anthony organization says that in 2013, abortions made up 94% of Planned Parenthood's pregnancy services. So we've got Planned Parenthood saying, "Oh, abortions is just a tiny, tiny part of what we do." And and the Susan B. Anthony list